Okay, Blair, you have the floor.
All right. Hello, everyone. How is everyone today, this fine Thursday?
Amazing.
I see Shani moving around. So I wanted to start this off by asking, has anybody even heard of Go or Golang? Have any familiarity with it other than just, what do you all know about it? Real quick.
It's a high-level language that functions like a low-level language.
I love that. Anybody else? Well, Shani, you actually you hit it right on the head. So yeah, it goes, I don't want to go through the whole history of the language in this little bit of time we have. Everyone's more than able to go to golang.org and get a brief overview over the language and determine why it was created by Rob Pike over at Google. But this language is really awesome. So most of you who know me know I've probably been programming about 20 years, various languages from C, C++, Objective-C, C#, JavaScript, Java, Visual Basic, Rails, could go on and on and on. And in 2016, I ran across an article that really just kind of changed me professionally in the programming world. I was running a small company at the time, and we were basically selling location-based data. And we were using C# and Web API to serve this data over the internet. And yeah, it was working great, but then we were starting to have some scaling issues because it got popular. And in 2016, I read an article of a company who had a similar issue that we did, and they switched to Go. And I'd heard of Go, it came out, I don't know, however many years ago. And I just thought it was some fad language that nobody would really be interested in. I thought it was just, infrastructure stuff. So I read this article, and this company basically rewrote their entire stack in like 5 days. And they more than quadrupled their scale. And I was like, what in the hell is that? And so I looked it up, and I was like, this little bitty tiny language is able to do all of this? Because if you've looked into Go, it's a really small footprint. It's a very small, simple programming language. So I started looking at it, and I told my team, I said, hey, we need to switch to this. We don't know how this thing works, but let's just build a prototype of our current API in this and just see if we can make it work and see if we can, number one, scale it, see how much faster we could get our responses to a request. And, we read a book, one of the very few books that were out at the time. And I was like, man, this looks really simple. And so literally in a couple of hours, we rewrote our API, and I was stunned. And I was like, that's unit test, that's everything. And then it's like, well, how do we host this thing? What does it run on? And lo and behold, Go runs on everything. It runs on Windows, it runs on Linux, it runs on OS 10, runs on anything that's out there. So I was just amazed by this language. And then, we figured out how to deploy it, and taking our code and compiling it down into its own deliverable, watching this thing go. It's got its own server built into it, so we didn't have to pay for that anymore. I was just completely amazed. So we switched our company to primarily using Go. And like I said, this is 2016, and we just threw something out there really quickly. Didn't have a bunch of information about it, which is kind of risky to do for a business, but it ended up working. And now we're exclusively writing in Go for all of our backend development work. But we also write websites with Go as well, because it is so, I don't know the word, but Go, it works with anything. We've got infrastructure, low-end level development. We've got web APIs. We've got websites. You can build anything you want with this thing. And the thing that I love about it, and I hope that people take out of this, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. People who know me understand that business is really important to me. And a programming language is a tool for you to get to do your business, whatever it is, in the tech space. But this language is so small. And one of the benefits I see from it is it takes no time for developers to learn this language. And if you can learn this language in a weekend and be productive with it, you can get more value out to customers that much faster. And it's got so many different ways to help you inject quality into whatever it is you're building. But I love the speed of it as well. It's got the name Go for a reason. It goes. So one of the things it's primarily been used for is, a lot of the cloud tools. Everyone talks about Docker and Kubernetes and Mesos and a lot of that service mesh technology. Just a lot of infrastructure work. But now I'm starting to see more companies turning to Go to do more application-based development. A lot of companies are building APIs in Go. A lot of companies are starting to build their own API frameworks to make the language, the development of products in the language Go even faster. So I can't say enough about it. And I'm not a person who gets into the programming language battles, the framework battles. We're trying to push value out to our customers as soon as we can. And this language has just stood up for us over the last, almost 5 years. And it's, I don't know, I love it. I want to kind of bring this information to as many people as I can, because Go is you've probably heard people talk about how opinionated it is as a language. There's some stuff in there that that if you're not aware of it, it'll make you want to give up. But part of the reason why I want to give this course is I want to show people around some of those things and why those things were built into the language, because all of these things are built to help you get your work completed and deployed as fast as possible. And I don't know what the universities are teaching these days. It's been a while since I was in college, but I started out with C and C++. And Go is pretty much Google's version of C. And like I said, there's so little there to this language and framework that it gets all of the complication out of the way. So you're able to get some work done pretty quickly, push some value out to customers, and at a lower cost as well. So I'm sure everybody's heard the stories of people getting those big AWS bills when they're expecting it to be cheaper than what it is. Go's got such a handle on managing memory and things of that nature. So that request that comes in, instead of it costing you, I don't know, $5, it may cost you a fifth of a cent for a request. So, um, it's built it's built really for the cloud, and um, I don't know what else you guys need me to say about it, but
Can you talk about so this is kind of targeting for women who have the equivalent of 1 year programming experience and have a kind of foundational understanding of coding. So can you kind of talk about, like, for folks who are in entry level roles or junior level roles, how this could open up some new career opportunities for them?
yeah, this language is right now goes the fastest growing programming language out there. It has been for the last couple of years. And I wanted to kind of target this at, I'd say newer developers, people who are fresh into the industry, because um, you get a fresh look and take on modern programming with the modern programming language. So there's no, I mean, some of us who've been in the industry on this call for a while, there's bias in programming languages, so to speak, meaning you have to do things this way in order for this language to perform, things of that nature. Newer developers, you're not going to be thinking about those types of things so much. So coming into this language fresh, um, you're not going to be burdened by your previous education in any other programming languages. So I think you'll get more out of it. And like I said, it's the fastest growing programming language right now. It's the pretty much the highest paid programming language. They pay more for Go developers right now, and there's a real need for Go developers right now, not just in the United States but around the world. And I mean, I get calls all the time, and I've got friends around the country. It's like there's a lot of opportunity in this programming language, and I've got a personal goal of I personally want to see more women in the programming space. And why start with a dying language? Start with something it's blossoming now, and there's not much competition in the space to get positions. So start now, and it's not a hard programming language. It's got some more modern things integrated into it. It's like, get a head start and get the experience, and at that point, it's it should make it easier to break through this particular part of the industry. So
Cool, thanks, Blair. So then I think, like, if we have any Q&A from any folks on the call that want to ask questions, now's the time to do that. And then Shawnee's gonna introduce some of our offerings that we have to learn Golang from Blair through WIT, Women in Tech Pittsburgh.
So I think so maybe some questions actually I think I had when I was like first kind of going like learning about Go. I was like, what is that salary price point? I'm so sorry, there's like a lot of dog sounds. So like looking at some of the price points for salaries, it's anywhere between like 106 to 135, which is markedly higher than a lot of like front end developer salaries. And that seems to be kind of on the lower end of things. And then if you really have expertise in Go, you can look forward to like 160 and above, possibly, right?
yeah, I've seen 250. Yes.
I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and sign up right now.
Yeah, of course, it depends on what part of the country you live in. Also, what companies you work for as well. But for the most part, yeah, I've not seen anything I actually haven't seen anything under 115 as a starting, to be quite honest with you. So that's just me personally looking literally from Washington State to Massachusetts. So,
and I think one thing that's really great about that too is also the versatility of where you can work from. I think, especially where we're coming out of maybe, coming out of the thick of the pandemic, obviously remote work has been kind of centralized as an opportunity to take advantage of at this point. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of as well is that there are a lot of remote positions, and I think that's very beneficial to especially to women in particular who might be caretakers or caregivers. I was a caregiver to my mom, and so one of the reasons why I got into programming was like, oh, I can actually work from home, this is great. So I think just also keeping that in mind for why we are focusing on women in these roles as well, why it's important. I think women tend to carry a lot more burden in their lives in terms of everything from, especially now, being a lot of the times being the breadwinner to being the caregiver, caretaker. So being able to have something that's going to be, versatile in your life as well is particularly important. So have you seen anything in particular in terms of how many roles women tend to have with Go already, or is that just something that we need to see more of? Sorry, dog. Ugh.
oh no, it's quite I've seen tons of women in the Golang space, whether they're working at Google, whether they're working at Netflix. It's growing here in Pittsburgh, Arizona. American Express is really big with Go right now, and I know I don't want to give too much information, but I do know some of the roles that they recently filled, they were filled with women, because I don't know the because, but other than they have the information, it was really hard for them to find people who have this experience, and they didn't fill the roles in their city. In Phoenix is where the positions were. These ended up having to be remote positions because they're just not, there's not a lot of Golang developers now, but all of the companies are seeing the benefits of the programming language, the speed to market, the simplicity in the code, which means there's a lower cost to maintaining that code as well. So they're shifting away from the traditional Javas and C Sharps in the finance industry to do more things with Go. And since everything's more mobile, it's got to be fast. So so the companies are moving, but the whole industry itself, the people who are in it doing the work, they're just starting to shift. And there are people who've been working with this programming language since it was released, but that number is so small right now. I just know that there are women all over the country who are working in this language right now. People that I do know, and I hope that answers your
Yeah, and I think I think this is more so becoming a conversation, really, like questions that people might have, trying to kind of address it at the jump if you're watching this in the recording. So another thing that especially coming out of a boot camp, Allison and I are both boot camp grads. So whenever you learn those foundational elements, like I started in C# and Ruby and Ruby on Rails right now, and so many aspects of JavaScript at this point, so many frameworks of JavaScript. I think, obviously those are like really foundational languages that help set you up for success in Go. But it was interesting because my mentor, she actually started learning Go after being a Rails developer for a while. So it was interesting to me to see, the people who I was looking up to professionally be like, okay, I got to go do this thing that's super, you know, so that was like the first signal I had, but I was still in a place where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like fresh out of boot camp. I'm like, how do I make my API calls? Like how am I setting up my API? Like I was just still trying to figure out a lot of those foundational things. So now I think this is like the perfect time to grab some of those grads and say, hey, okay, you got this far. How about you just like maybe bypass some of the stuff that's like, okay, write your first autocomplete, do this entire project for a week that you should get paid for. This is like another thing, right? Is like when you're starting to interview for jobs as like a junior developer, even I don't know if I guess I have just gotten into my first like mid-level role, but yeah, these like kind of ridiculously long-winded projects that they make you do in interviews. And honestly, I feel like it's pretty cumbersome for people who are looking for jobs, who don't have a lot of money, who don't have a lot of time maybe yet, that are like trying to speed into just getting a job in the industry. You need that foot in the door, but a lot of like, obviously JavaScript and even Rails, like we're seeing a lot of these languages get choked out because there is such ubiquity now. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to say to developers everywhere, like, hey, you can bypass some of the BS in your interviews. So if you could speak about like the interview process for Go, what you've seen, that would be great.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a traditional, tech interview process. One of the things that I have noticed is people really want to see your code, not to critique it. One of the big things in Go is, setting up your project. So you'll find that question all over the internet. So in most interviews, if you've had a successful implementation in Go, you're pretty much, I don't want to say you're pretty much in, but it means that you've got an understanding of, you hear people say Go's idiomatic. It basically means there's some rules around it. Like, means something simple, like you can't have a parameter defined but not use it. Your code will not compile. There's a bunch of little things like that. So you get into the interview space. It's like if you got a working project, it's like all of those little idioms, all that kind of jazz. It's like they know that you know all of that stuff. You've gotten that out of the system. And again, the language is so simple. So when you're talking about building an API and I'll just, I've built APIs in C# and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is too much. Doing it in Java is like painstaking to me. So Rails is pretty simple, but I like Rails. It's a little slow for me for some of the modern stuff. So, but there's a little bit of work to get to doing some of that stuff. In Go, it's really trivial. I mean, it's so trivial. So the bigger things that people are more focused on are how you set up your project. And then they want to know why you set your project up this way, or how your project, the way you've put it together, how does it actually fit the notion of microservice, and how does it lend to the speed of a microservice, or lowering the maintenance costs of software? What's your testing structure like? So those are more the things that are going to come up in those interviews, because like I said, the language is, I mean, it's like this big compared to everything else. Is like, so it's like there's not 50 ways to do something. This is how you do it. And
That's great. I feel like that's especially coming from, you know, like I said, like as somebody who's burgeoning from a junior to mid-level position, I think one of the most confusing things for me was like clean code, like really understanding clean code. And I know that's right. Like, yeah, I've read the book, like I've done the stuff, but still, I think there's, when you're coming from a field that isn't necessarily, you know, that you're not coming from like a low level language, that's going to be a little bit more challenging to fully understand because there's so many different ways to do things. You'll, especially when you like jump into like like when you're in a monolith, you're like, all of a sudden you're like, wow, how many developers have touched this code over how much time? This is a mess. You know what I mean? Like you're in this mess. So there's something also really appealing to me now, having gone and through and like seen a bunch of different code bases.
Oh yeah.
To be like, oh wow, maybe I could like pop into something, and there is kind of just like a structured way to like do it right and just like keep that going because that's what works. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, this language is going to force you to keep it simple. that's that's the only thing else I can say, because you have to experience it at first. So um, you know, you can mess up any program. Anybody can dirty up or muddy up any program, but if you're really trying to build something, it's really hard to complicate something in Go. It's really hard to complicate. Um, and again, it works with anything. It's like you can build anything you want. It's like we've got projects out right now, and um, you know, if you're running in Linux or Unix and you want jobs to run, you have to run these cron jobs. And I'm like, I everybody hates cron jobs. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're just a pain, and they're cumbersome to get set up. So I mean, we literally wrote a small, like, I don't know, 100-line program where we can basically pull a module into any project and write our own cron jobs to, you know, look at the server time every day, boom, and do it. So we we wrote our own cron utility in Go, and it took us 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Um,
So
that
basically
works.
the like, so there's like a DevOps element for developers to be able to just say, hey, I need this tool. Let me just go ahead and build it in the context of the rest of the micro or the program itself, right?
Yeah. And we use it to run nightly billing. You know what I mean? So I just say, hey, start me up at XYZ time every day, and then run this Go routine, which is a concurrent call, which
Yeah.
is one of the other. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's interesting to me too. I think again, like again, speaking to kind of a lot of people that might be like popping into the field, that aspect of automation also isn't taught as much. And I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
I would be really curious as to some of the CS majors, how much automation is really taught there as well, and how deep testing is really taught, because I think those are two elements that once you're in, you know, the workforce, those are things that really keep a project running and humming, and allows you to actually further your product or project.
Yeah.
So I really like that there's a focus on that kind of at the forefront rather, instead of kind of being this ancillary thing that might be kind of tossed in as you go, and then everybody has like a different testing process, and you're like, oh my God, why are there so many different ways to do this context?
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny, you know, you've got all these programming languages, and everybody wants you to write unit tests. And the one thing that I like about Go is, like, I'm a big proponent of writing unit tests. Go's got its own testing framework built into it, and it's pretty simple. But when Go, it doesn't error, it panics. So, and when it panics, your app is just it's gone. You know what I mean? I know that sounds really bad, but again, it's oh, hang on, my dad's calling. Sorry about that. The beautiful thing about the panic is it's going to force you to basically write unit tests. And I mean, you just can't. I mean, you could get away with it, but you don't want your code to error out and panic and go. So you build in ways to deal with panic. So it's a beautiful thing. So it when you talk about automation, I mean, it's whatever your mind can think of at that point, and the language can fit in that space. I call it like the Swiss Army knife of programming languages, because you can work at that infrastructure level. You can work at a systems level. You can work at a web level. You can even work at the Windows or OS 10 or Linux level if you want to build, a desktop application as well. I don't understand why. I understand a lot of companies. I don't understand why they're not moving to it. Some companies aren't moving to it, but I totally get why the companies who are moving to it do it, because again, it's cost effective from implementation, helps you manage your implementation costs, your maintenance costs, just the simplicity of the work, and you get a better quality product just because of, if you're going to code something simply because the language is going to force you to do it, that makes your testing efforts a little more simple, right? So, and managing the change in software is that much easier because, you're not going to, your tests aren't going to be confusing, if that makes sense. So, and the way they structure the test within the project, which we'll get more information on in the course, your tests they go right next to your implementation file, or your project file. So, and you can run them at a package or module level or the entire application level. So, I don't know. I love it.
That's awesome. I was going to say, after coming from Ember JS, I was like, why are all of these files called the same thing? I'd be like searching through 50 different files that are all called
Yeah.
page 3 or whatever. So, and obviously they have very different functions within the context of the application. You're like, great, okay, I'll get there eventually. So, that, I think that's something that I've run into a lot with speaking with other newer developers. They're like, okay, like I got this. I'm in a situation like, am I ever going to write a bubble sort? Like, probably not. Like, for the most part, probably not. I hope not. Though I literally just did. But I think there's something, to be said about being able to like wrap your head around something and then just be able to drop into it, instead of kind of like having that like, okay, I think I got it. I think I got it.
Yeah.
I think I got it. And then like 6 months down the line, you're still figuring something out about this framework, which can be, a little bit stressful, I think, when you're new to something.
Yeah, I tell people this story all the time to go along with what you're saying. So my niece, she's just starting her 3rd year in software engineering. She just got a raise. So she graduated from UC Davis, University of California, Davis, with a computer science program and with a computer science degree. And she moved to Ohio, and she could not find a job for the life of her. She'd go through the interviews and she called me up. She's like, what am I doing wrong? And yada, yada, yada. I'm like, we'll figure it out. So she got an interview. She interviewed with a company, and they gave her a project to do. And the job is pretty much dependent upon getting this project done. And I told her, I said, hey, let's use Go for your backend, for your APIs. And, you can use whatever you want on the front end. She used Vue.js at the time. So in a weekend, I taught her how to use Go, just basic stuff. And I taught her how to host it on Heroku in 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, so now get your project done. So she built her API in Go, deployed it to Heroku. She built her front end in Vue and deployed it on whatever Google's cloud thing is. And then she turned it in, it's out there for the interviewers to see. And she told them the tooling she used. She gave them, of course, the source code for it. And they were just completely blown away that she used this particular programming language, because it's something that they're trying to get their team to embrace. But there's, a lot of people think it's like this huge language, and that, they don't know, they're intimidated by it. So she's in the interview and they asked her about it. And she's like, well, I learned it in a weekend. My uncle, blah, 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 blah. And then I was able to build this project. She's like, the front end web stuff is simple. But she's like, I had to understand how to use this. And she got the job. She's been there 3 years. And now she's, polyglot. She's got Go, she's got Python and Node.js as well, but they're moving away from Node, and because they're preferring Go. So it's, I love the story because, like you're kind of alluding to, there's so much to learn in software development, and you get some of these languages that, it's going to take people forever to start to feel confident in a particular language or framework. Because, I mean, like .NET, for instance, not bashing .NET. I love it. I think it's a great framework, but it's so large now. You know what I mean? And I mean, it takes people forever to feel, I don't think anybody can master a language, but to feel like you have a handle over that language, or a command over that language. But this, you can get to it pretty easily. It's I don't know, I think it's a perfect language to start programming in and then grow from there. Because again, it's just going to force you to keep things really, really simple. And I don't know, a lot of the best things that have happened in tech have been real simple tools or simple projects and things of that nature. And being able to manage the growth of those things pretty easily by adding something simple to something simple to something simple to something simple. And then you get whatever you get from that. So
Keep it modular, right?
say that again.
Keep it modular.
Oh yeah. And it's actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but here's another great thing about the language is it's package based. And every language has modules and things of that nature, but Go is really built on its own module system. They call them packages. So you can have basically your whole application is just it's just several layers of packages. In .NET you've got a namespace and things of that nature, but the point of Go is every package is its own independent running program that it can run on its own. And we talk about microservices. It's like this is built for this functional area of a company. So it takes it even a step lower. So I was talking about payment. I've got a payment package. I can use it anywhere. I can run it on its own. I can pass whatever I want to it on a server. I can integrate it into another application. So it forces you to think about programming in even simpler terms. So I keep talking about it's a simple language, but it is truly simple on simple. You got this tiny program that needs to run on its own. It's got its own test. Okay, let me pull this into this by just referencing this package. And then you can easily share that package, version it, do whatever you need to do. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's great. I think, so with our remaining time, I think talking about why we're doing this, I was kind of alluding to that with some of my questions. But I think that, what you've really illustrated is, like what we were saying before, there's a need for developers in this language. And obviously the salary price points that we're seeing are really indicative of that. It's competitive. And to be competitive in tech is something that it can be difficult to do, especially, when maybe you're newer to the field or you haven't had that experience in working in a lot of different companies or a lot of different code bases. You need that experiential learning. So this is where we, work when you mentioned that, hey, I would really love to teach, more people go. Realistically, it's kind of selfish on all of our parts, right? Because we're like, hey, people need this. Everybody I think wants to make some more money. So the opportunity is there and the knowledge is there, and connecting those two pieces is really important. So that's the kind of first, just like out the gate element of it. But the second part is, really being able to focus on women working with other women. It's building a network, it's building a community. And so to be able to fold into an already really supportive open source community such as Go is really exciting, I think. And so to start really expanding that network and bringing people on board and bringing women on board, specifically to be able to support each other in this process, I think is really exciting. And to really be able to learn from each other, with one another as well, is something that we've seen. Like when there is shared experiential learning, there's an empathy there. There's a process to be patient and also be able to maybe, take some time or, look at things a little bit differently. I know in certain situations, I've definitely had, male colleagues that have just, not been as understanding of where I'm coming from, maybe, and not, obviously it's not all men, but I think those situations, like when I've been able to work with other women developers, it's been really exciting because we've been able to kind of process things in a different way. So I really am excited to be able to learn this language with other women, and be very. I feel like it's also interesting to me that, like, you can have an all male development team anywhere, right? And nobody thinks twice about it.
Right.
But if you have an all female development team, there will always be somebody that's like, oh, but like we need a guy on this team. I'm like, but how is it so flipped like that? So I don't know. I think also just the prospect of being able to like have cohorts that are based with female voices and female identified voices is pretty exciting. And also, obviously saying that learning is gendered, that's not, there's no empirical truth to that per se, but I think there is something to be said again from that experiential space. So the opportunity to create a space that might be different than what we've seen before. This is an experiment of our own in terms of learning. So I don't know. I think that's another reason why we decided to go with this approach. And so I'm curious about what your thoughts on that, and being the only dude in the room, perhaps.
Well, I love it. I'm a big believer in community and positive relationships in technology. I've experienced all kinds of stuff, being an African American, and but the thing that's continuously got me through and kept me learning, believe it or not, is the community that I've been able to build. I mean, even learning this language, it's like, you know, some friends of mine in Arizona, we started a company, and learning this, because there's a bit of a paradigm shift, but learning this together, um, you know, it helped push us through. And, you know, we're all still working together in some capacity, um, and our networks have pretty much just grown. You know, I'm here, some people are in California, some people are wherever. Um, but the beautiful thing is, if you're in need of looking for a new role for whatever reason, you can reach through your community, your network, people that you've worked with here. Or if there's something new that's coming within this programming language or the Go space, I mean, you got people that you built relationship with, because it's like, you know, going through something that's, it may seem difficult in the beginning. It's like, you know, and you're depending on each other to get there. I mean, you're pretty much like this for a while, as long as people want to be together. So there's a trust that you build, which is part of community building. And you know, I think we need it. I think it's needed anyway. And you know, who better to do it? You know,
That's a part of the vetting process too, right? There's, I mean, one of my favorite horror stories was when, because I get really nervous when I'm asked like pointed questions, and it doesn't mean that I don't know the answer. But again, I came from a very, you know, a fast and loose environment comparatively in terms of learning programming, but I had come from the tech world, so I understood the business part. But I had a manager say, I don't mean to sound like a dick, but you need to learn how the internet works. And I was like, well, I do, but I just, you made me nervous with something, and then I didn't answer it right. And now you're telling me that I don't know how this works. And this, you know, it can be a little bit maddening. So, and sometimes like language communities are like that too. I've seen that. And that can be very stressful when you're like, just getting into something and just trying to learn ultimately. And it doesn't mean that you're not capable. So I think having, again, access to a positive open source community and that language community is going to be really impactful in terms of it, whether you stay in the field of technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, all communities aren't positive, you know what I mean? But I always say, it's like, you have an opportunity to build a community, which you have. And you know, just think about this. You're trying to expand your community. You know what I mean? And like I said, people who learn together, work together, and grow together. You know, personally, professionally, it's like that community that, you know, tends to last a little bit longer. And it's like, I mean, just think about it. Women in Tech Pittsburgh. Who else is trying to build a community around Go in Pittsburgh right now? Even though there are companies trying to hire Go developers in tech. So, and
good question. Who else?
yeah, I mean, you're in the space, and you know, I know you have access to individuals who have the experience, and they want to do it. They want to share the information and knowledge. So, you know, you're doing it. This is this is the first, this is the first thing that you're doing with this, because I know there'll be more. So, and then it can grow into, you know, some annual community thing or whatever it is that you want to do with it. But the bigger thing is, you're building a community of, you know, people that, you know, you're bringing them in, you're giving them some education, and then who knows, maybe it grows into, you know, the ability to, you know, place people in positions in companies locally or in other cities in the state or other states. So the thing is, you're here first. Your reasoning for doing it is, it comes from a positive place. Like, you truly want to help people. You want to get them this information. You want to, basically, to me, give women a, a seat at the table, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Because it's needed. It's like, we've got, there's so many jobs out here, and we keep looking in this one space to get people to fill these jobs, but they can't fill them. So you've got all these companies, they're unable to, meet their professional goals, so to
Or
speak.
even in product management, we call that a backlog. Is that correct?
That is exactly it.
We've got quite the job backlog coming up. I'm sure there's a bunch of agile people out there. Like, let me stick. Let's get our scrum team together. Let's go ahead and solve this. Really quickly about the program itself. So obviously this is our pilot, but we are looking forward to figuring out what really works for everybody involved. And so this will be an opportunity to shape learning essentially moving forward. Again, I think speaking to communities that are already existing, one of the reasons why I, wasn't deterred is that I ended up going to another vetted company that women who I already knew worked there said, hey, actually, why don't you come work with us? This is a positive environment. There are developers here that when you ask a question, they're not going to give you a jerky answer about it. They're just going to work with you to find the answer. Like if you have the foundational skill, you're going to learn. And then beyond that, when it comes to mid and senior level positions, there is mentorship that's required, right? So yeah, so being able to kind of have an influx is going to be important, and that we can kind of like head some of this backlog off at the pass, so to speak. So the opportunity to kind of jump from maybe like your CS career at college or in your junior level position where you feel kind of stuck in JavaScript, or maybe you're stuck in, maybe you don't want to work in .NET anymore. I never want to go back to .NET. I think this is a great opportunity for those people who want to push out to that. So it's going to be 5 weeks of actual learning. And then the 6th week, we'll have a panel discussing with some of these companies that are hiring, what they're looking for in their Go candidates, how to get jobs at these places. So if you're ready to make that push and jump up, this is a perfect opportunity to do so. So June 20, I'm sorry, do I have that right? June 24th is our first date, and we'll be running for once a week, Thursdays starting from June 24th, East Coast, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Is that correct? Yep. Like, do I have all my facts right? You can look at www.whippgh.org/Golang to learn more information. There is a cost of $1,000 per student in order to cover our, obviously our educational fees, our program assistants that we have working, our program managers, and marketing. So that's what that covers. But I'm very remiss to find any kind of program that is that low cost. We're doing this because we want people to be able to have this opportunity. And it's, this is an opportunity for everybody involved to, again, shape a curriculum. And then ultimately, we do have some scholarships that are available. So if you are unable to pay $1,000 right now, because you're just getting into, you're applying the jobs right now out of a boot camp, or you're, coming out of school, or perhaps you got that first job, that your foot in the door, but now you have student loan bills to pay. We do have some flexible funding available. So please just let us know in your application, and we're happy to help, figure that out, because we just want you to be here. And yeah, we're just open to any questions. Feel free to email us at golang@whippgh.org. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody. So we have a rolling application. It closes on June 20th. And if we could, we already have a number of folks that are signed up already, so we're excited to see them. But we'd like to get this out across the country. So if you have contacts, if you have other developers, and obviously spread this through your male development cohorts as well, like make sure that everybody knows about it. So even if it's somebody who's just interested in getting into programming, it doesn't mean that you can't poke your head in and say, hey, what is this about? Maybe this is a, you know, potential place for you to start and then move backward. Maybe you did want to go to a boot camp, but you're like, hey, I'm not really sure if I have this much money to set aside. So maybe I just want to do this as like an opportunity. We do ask for that previous programming experience, but it doesn't mean that you would be an unsuccessful candidate if you don't have it yet. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to just approach us and say, hey, I'm interested. So I don't know, I'm super excited. I love that. Like, is that your dad again? Because I swear every day my mom or grandma is like, what are you working? I'm like, yeah, I have a job. I did this. Remember? I went and I got the job that doesn't let me have afternoons off because you wanted me to. So we're looking forward to having everybody join us. And yeah, I'm looking forward to building some stuff. What should we build, Blair? What is our first project?
We're definitely building an API. We can build a store. We can sell some product.
I love some retail technology.
Let's do
It's
that.
also the bane of my bank account. So maybe I like it too much. Speaking of automation, that's awesome. Yeah, so that sounds great. I personally would like to build a store that sells more plants so I can buy all these plants. It's a plant problem. But all right, so we're rolling up onto 7:30. I've asked a lot of crazy questions. I've asked less crazy questions too. And now I think it's for anybody else who still has a question to ask us. So we will see you on the internet and learn together. Joy, that's excellent. Okay, so I'm just going to read this out loud. So thank you so much for hosting the session. I work with multiple companies in the area, and I'm hearing a lot more requests for candidates with Golang, so wanted to learn more about it. It's a rare find here in Pittsburgh. That's really awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Joy. And yeah, that's going to be really important. If you want to speak to that at all, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so a lot of companies just even asking, you know, we're starting to explore this. What are you seeing in your candidates? Do many have it? The candidates that I have found in place already in the last few months, I've had, in the last 2 months, I've had 5 already requests with Golang, and it's hard. So we've pulled from some of our San Francisco team, you know, Apple's huge with Golang. So we've pulled from those projects. American Express, again, that's one of our accounts too, and pulling from there. But every day I'm hearing more. Tell me about Golang. And somebody else I was speaking to tonight, I told him about this session, and he said, what do you know about it? He's like, we're actually thinking of switching to it. So another big Pittsburgh company too. So everybody's talking about it. It's growing. So get it now.
That's so exciting. That's so great to hear. It's also very validating, right? I think a lot of people are able to really, you know, again, that need for like, what job do I get now or next? Like, where do I go? How do I build my career in this direction? What is going to actually be career building so you can get into those mid and senior level positions? So that is ultimately, you know, what we want to see coming out of this program, is that every single developer that comes in, learns this with us, is going to move on to their next career, their big career goal, right? So and it's a step ladder ultimately. So we want to be able to really help bring people to Pittsburgh as well. I think that's the other opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording right here.
Awesome.